Don't let them change his name. That was what the broken puppet said, not in a puppet voice, not in a stage voice, in the shaking whisper of a real girl who sounded like she had been hiding in the dark for years. Tessa Rivera heard it at 9:17 p.m., behind the curtains of Alderbrook Academy's old theater, with a screwdriver in her hand and dust on her knees. She had only been trying to fix the puppet before the fundraising show. The drama teacher had begged someone to make it presentable. The janitor called it trash. The rich kids called it creepy. But Tessa knew broken things had memories. Her father repaired clocks, radios, music boxes, and cheap toys people threw away when one small part stopped working. He always told her rich people replaced things. Poor people listened to them first. So Tessa listened. Inside the puppet's wooden chest was an old recorder wrapped in yellowed stage tape. The first voice belonged to a girl. They took him through the west stair. A second voice answered, "Mara, you need to stop saying that name." Then came a sharp sound, like someone grabbing the recorder. Then silence. Tessa backed away so fast she knocked over a box of old costumes. That was when Oliver Reed stepped from the wings. He was 12, polished, and rich enough that most adults lowered their voices around him. His father's name was on the new science hall. His mother's portrait hung outside the chapel. But Oliver was not looking at Tessa. He was looking at the puppet as if it had opened a locked door inside his own head. "What name?" Tessa whispered. Oliver's mouth trembled. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "My mother used to wake up crying from a dream about the west stair." Before Tessa could ask another question, the theater lights snapped on. Headmistress Marlowe stood in the aisle, and she was not looking at the puppet. She was looking at the recorder in Tessa's hand. Headmistress Vivian Marlowe crossed the theater aisle with the calm of someone who had never needed to hurry. Even in the dim light, her silver hair was pinned perfectly, her black dress smooth, her pearl necklace resting at the center of her throat like a seal of authority. "Tessa Rivera," she said, "give that to me." Tessa closed her fingers around the recorder. A few minutes ago, it had been an object inside a broken prop. Now it felt alive. "I found it inside the puppet," Tessa said. Marlowe looked at the wooden figure on the floor. Its painted face stared upward, one blue cheek scratched, one arm hanging loose. "That puppet belongs to the school archive," Marlowe replied. "You had no permission to open it. The chest was split. Then you should have reported the damage." Tessa knew that tone. Alderbrook adults used it when they wanted a scholarship student to remember the size of the gift they had been given. Her father called it a velvet rope voice, soft enough to sound polite, tight enough to keep people out. Behind Marlowe, the theater doors opened. Music and laughter spilled in from the Founders' Gala, where donors were listening to speeches about generosity. Alderbrook showed kindness in bright rooms. The locked halls stayed in the dark. Oliver Reed stood near the wings. His suit was perfect. His shoes had no dust on them. He looked like every brochure version of an Alderbrook boy, except for his face. It had lost all color. "Oliver," Marlowe said, her voice turning gentle, "your father is looking for you." Oliver swallowed. That voice. What voice? The woman on the tape. His eyes flicked toward Tessa's hand. She sounded like my mother. For the first time, Marlowe's expression moved too quickly to hide. It was only a small tightening around her mouth, but Tessa saw it. She had spent most of her life noticing what adults thought poor kids were too busy to see. Then Marlowe smiled. "Grief makes echoes, Oliver, especially in old places." Tessa almost handed over the recorder. Almost. She pictured her father at his repair table above the laundromat, bending over a music box with a cracked lid. He had taken the school's cheap repair jobs for years, never complaining when payment came late. If Tessa lost her scholarship, her father would blame himself. If she refused the headmistress, she could lose it before morning. Marlowe held out her hand. "Tessa." Then the recorder crackled again. No one had touched the button. Static filled the aisle, followed by the girl's voice, weaker this time. "If they ask, his name is Owen Bell." Oliver's head lifted. The name seemed to strike him somewhere deeper than memory. His hand went to the inside pocket of his jacket, where Tessa noticed the edge of a folded gala program. Marlowe stepped forward. Tessa stepped back. The movement was small, but it changed everything. "Tessa," Marlowe said, no longer smiling, "you are making a serious mistake." The theater door opened wider. Nathaniel Reed entered with 2 board members behind him. He was taller than Tessa expected, with grey at his temples and the tired confidence of a man used to having rooms rearrange themselves around him. His name was carved on the science hall and printed on the gala invitations. "What is going on?" he asked. Marlowe answered first. "A minor discipline issue. Miss Rivera was found tampering with archived property. I wasn't tampering, Tessa said. Her voice sounded smaller than she wanted. Nathaniel looked at her, then at Oliver. Why are you here, son? Oliver opened his mouth, but Marlowe touched his shoulder. He was upset by a sound effect from an old theatre prop, she said. Given Amelia's passing, I think it startled him. At his mother's name, Oliver flinched. Nathaniel noticed. His eyes sharpened. Tessa raised the recorder. There's a girl on this, she said. She said someone changed a boy's name. Marlowe gave a quiet sigh. Alderbrook has staged hundreds of productions. Children record lines. They invent dramas. They hide things in props. That does not make every old tape a crime. Then why do you want it so badly? Tessa asked. The board members exchanged glances. Marlowe's face cooled. Nathaniel held out his hand, but not to Marlowe. To me, he said to Tessa. Tessa hesitated. Nathaniel was powerful enough to protect her or ruin her without raising his voice. She did not know which kind of man he would become once the recorder was in his hand. Then Oliver looked at her. For the first time all evening, the rich boy did not look polished or distant. He looked scared. Tessa placed the recorder in Nathaniel Reed's palm. He pressed play. The tape hissed. A woman's voice came through, broken by static but unmistakably adult. Do not put Oliver on that paper. That is not his name. Nathaniel went still. Oliver whispered, Mom? Marlowe reached for the recorder. Nathaniel closed his fist around it first, and in that one motion, Tessa saw the first crack in Alderbrook's perfect walls. Nathaniel Reed did not raise his voice. That made the theatre feel more dangerous. He looked at Headmistress Marlowe, then at the recorder in his hand. No one touches this until I know what it is. Marlowe's smile returned, but it had lost its warmth. Of course, but we should also protect the school from misunderstanding. Old materials can be taken out of context. Then context should help, Nathaniel said. One board member stepped closer. Nathaniel, the gala is still going. There are donors in the East Hall, reporters near the entrance. If this becomes a scene, it already is one, Oliver said. Everyone turned toward him. Oliver seemed surprised by his own words, but he did not take them back. Marlowe softened her tone. Oliver, sweetheart, you've had a shock. I heard my mother. You heard a damaged tape. Tessa watched Oliver's shoulders pull inward. He was rich enough to have a name on buildings, but in that second he looked like adults had been explaining his own feelings to him for years. Nathaniel noticed too. Vivian, he said, give my son some room. The headmistress removed her hand from Oliver's shoulder. Not quickly, not angrily, just enough to show she was obeying because Nathaniel Reed had asked. Security arrived 2 minutes later. They did not touch Nathaniel. They did not touch Oliver. They looked at Tessa. One guard picked up the wooden puppet with gloved hands and placed it on a velvet prop cloth. The puppet's painted face tilted toward her. One eye was darker than the other, and a crack ran from its collar to the carved buttons on its chest. Tessa, Marlowe said, you will wait in the rehearsal room until we contact your father. The words hit harder than a punishment. My father didn't do anything. No one said he did, but Tessa heard the part Marlowe left unsaid. Her father repaired stage lamps, cracked chairs, loose cabinet handles, anything Alderbrook wanted fixed cheaply and quietly. One complaint from the headmistress could take away a month of his work. Nathaniel glanced at her. Who asked you to repair the puppet? Miss Halloway, the drama teacher. Marlowe folded her hands. That may be true. It does not explain why Miss Rivera opened the object. The chest was already split, Tessa said. If I glued it shut without checking inside, the hinge pressure could crack it again. Nathaniel studied her. It was the first look that did not make Tessa feel like a problem. You know repairs, he said. My dad does. And you help him? When he lets me. Oliver looked at her then, really looked, not as a scholarship kid, but as someone who understood a machine he did not. The rehearsal room smelled like sawdust, makeup powder, and old radiator heat. Tessa sat beneath posters from past productions, while a security guard waited outside. Marlowe had told her not to leave. Oliver was supposed to go back to his father. Instead, 10 minutes later, a folded gala program slid under the rehearsal room door. Tessa stared at it. The guard outside was talking on his phone. Tessa waited until his footsteps moved away. Then she opened the program. A note had been written in blue ink beside Oliver's printed name. I don't remember, Owen, but my mother kept old programs. Below that, another line. Third cabinet, costume room, bottom drawer. Tessa read it twice. Then the doorknob turned. She shoved the program under her sleeve as Nathaniel entered. Oliver stood behind him, pale but determined. Marlowe was not with them. That mattered. Nathaniel closed the door. Oliver says you may know how to open the puppet without damaging it further. Tessa kept her eyes on the table. I already opened it. I mean the rest of it. Oliver stepped forward and placed a small wooden hand on the table. The puppet's hand. It had been removed from the cloth. There are marks inside the wrist, he said. They look like numbers. Nathaniel looked unhappy that Oliver had noticed before he had. Tessa took the puppet hand carefully. 3 shallow cuts had been made inside the joint. Not random damage. Too even. Too deliberate. Scene numbers, Tessa murmured. Oliver leaned closer. What? Old theatre crews mark props by scene so they know when to bring them on. My dad fixed marionettes for a community theatre once. Sometimes the marks are hidden where the audience can't see. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. And these numbers mean? Maybe nothing. Tessa turned the wooden hand. Or maybe whoever hid the recorder wanted someone to look past the tape. The words stayed in the small room. For the first time, Oliver did not look afraid. He looked hungry for the next piece. Marlowe had called it a misunderstanding. Tessa was starting to think misunderstanding was just a clean word adults used when they did not want to say cover-up. Oliver reached into his jacket and pulled out a key card. The costume room is empty during gala speeches. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. Oliver, I'm not asking permission to run away, Oliver said. I'm asking you to come with us. That stopped him. Tessa could see the struggle in Nathaniel's face. The father wanted to remove his son from danger. The donor wanted to avoid scandal. The man who had heard his dead wife's voice wanted answers. At last, he turned to Tessa. Can you get us there without being seen? Tessa almost laughed. Rich people asked that only when they needed the skills they usually punished. Yes, she said, but not through the main hall. They moved through the service corridor behind the stage, past stacked chairs and crates of fake ivy. Tessa led because she knew the building from the places students like her were allowed to enter, only when carrying something heavy. Oliver followed close enough that she could hear his breathing. You don't have to do this, he whispered. I know. My father can protect you. Tessa glanced back. Your father can protect me from people who are scared of him. That's not the same thing. Oliver had no answer. The costume room was locked, but Oliver's keycard worked on the second try. Inside, gowns and jackets hung under plastic covers. Along the far wall stood 3 metal cabinets. Third cabinet, bottom drawer. Tessa crouched and pulled. The drawer stuck. Oliver grabbed the handle beside her. Together, they forced it open with a shriek of metal that made both of them wince. Inside were old programs bundled by year. Nathaniel shut the door behind them and stood watch. Tessa found the folder from 10 years ago. The cover showed the same puppet, cleaner then, dressed in blue. The production title was The Glass Sparrow. She flipped to the cast list. Halfway down the page, beside the words puppet lead, was a name crossed through in black ink, but the ink had faded just enough. Marabelle. Below it, in smaller type, another line had been scratched almost to nothing. Assistant Owen Bell. Age 6. Oliver reached out, but his fingers stopped before touching the page. He looked at the name as if it had been waiting for him longer than he had been alive. From outside the costume room, a woman's voice moved through the corridor. Mr. Reed? Marlowe. Nathaniel stepped toward the door. Tessa turned the program over quickly, and something slipped from between the pages. A small school photograph fell onto the floor. It showed a girl of about 14 standing beside the blue puppet. Next to her was a little boy with Oliver's eyes. On the back, someone had written one sentence in pencil. If they erase him, make the puppet remember. Marlowe's voice stopped outside the costume room. Nathaniel put one finger to his lips. For a man whose name covered buildings, he moved with surprising care. He took the photograph from Tessa, slipped it between the pages of the old program, and handed both to Oliver. Inside your jacket, he whispered. Oliver obeyed. The door opened before anyone could step away from the drawer. Headmistress Marlowe stood in the hall with Lyle Benton beside her, Alderbrook's head of development, a thin man with careful glasses and a smile designed for donors. His bow tie was crooked by less than an inch, which somehow made him seem more dangerous. There you are, Marlowe said. Nathaniel did not apologize. Oliver wanted to see old theatre materials. His mother loved the arts. Benton gave a soft laugh. The archive is dusty for a gala night. So is history, Nathaniel said. Tessa looked down before Marlowe could catch her face. The bottom drawer was still open. Bundles of programs sat crooked from where they had searched too fast. Marlowe noticed anyway. Miss Rivera, she said, you were told to remain in the rehearsal room. I came with us, Oliver said quickly. With me? Nathaniel corrected, his eyes still on Marlowe. She came with me. It was the first time a powerful adult had used his own status as a shield for Tessa. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt the weight of it. Rich people could stand in front of consequences. Poor people usually had to stand under them. Marlowe's gaze moved to Oliver's jacket. Oliver's hand drifted toward the place where the program was hidden. Benton stepped between them with polished ease. Perhaps we should all return to the gala before the donors begin writing their own story. That sounds like a threat, Tessa said. The words escaped before she could stop them. Benton turned to her, still smiling. No, child, it is a lesson. People believe the version that reaches them first. Nathaniel's face hardened. Marlowe placed a hand on Benton's arm, a small warning. Lyle, that was how Tessa learned something important. Marlowe controlled the school. Benton controlled the story outside it. They were escorted back through the service corridor. No one said they were being escorted, but 2 security guards appeared at each turn. By the time they reached the theater, the puppet was gone. Only the velvet cloth remained on the table. They took it, Tessa whispered. Oliver looked toward Marlowe. The puppet has been secured to prevent further damage, the headmistress said. Where? Oliver asked. In proper storage. Which storage? One that does not require children to worry about it. That night, Tessa's father came for her through the service entrance, still wearing his brown repair jacket and carrying his toolbox. His face changed when he saw the guards. He did not ask what she had done in front of them. He only said, "Come on, Tess." In the old pickup, with Alderbrook shrinking behind them on the hill, Tessa told him everything except the part where Nathaniel Reed had protected her. She did not know how to explain that without making it sound safe. Her father drove without speaking for a long time. Finally, he said, "Did you keep anything?" Tessa blinked. "What? When a school like that takes the object, you keep the detail they forgot mattered." Tessa reached into her sleeve and pulled out a thread of dark cord. It had caught on her cuff when she handled the puppet's wooden wrist. Her father glanced at it, then back to the road. Good. At home, above the laundromat, the thread looked ordinary under the kitchen light. Black stage cord, frayed at one end, but when Tessa laid it flat, she saw 3 tight knots, a long space, then 2 more knots close together. Her father brought over a magnifying lamp. "Repair marks?" she asked. "No." He touched the cord lightly with the end of a pencil. "Intentional. Someone tied this with small fingers or very patient hands." "Mara," Tessa said. The name felt strange in their small kitchen, as if a girl from 10 years ago had entered and was waiting to be heard. Tessa pulled out a copy of the gala program she had taken from the trash earlier that evening. On the back, she sketched the 3 cuts from the puppet's wrist, then the knots from the cord. Scene numbers: 3, long space; 2, scene 3, scene 2, or stair 3, door 2, or room 32. The possibilities made her head ache. The next morning, Alderbrook treated the night before as if nothing had happened. The Founders' Gala photographs were already posted on the school website. Nathaniel Reed appeared beside Marlowe, under a headline about opportunity. Oliver was not in any of the pictures. Neither was Tessa. At homeroom, students whispered that she had stolen something from the theater. Someone had written Puppet Girl on a sticky note and placed it on her desk. Tessa folded the note once and put it in her pocket, not because it did not hurt, because she might need proof of how quickly Alderbrook made a story travel. During lunch, Miss Halloway, the drama teacher, found her near the prop sink. "I heard they blamed you," she said. Tessa kept scrubbing paint from a plastic moon. "Did you tell them you asked me to fix it?" "I did." "And?" Miss Halloway looked toward the door. "They said the issue was not the repair. It was what you disturbed." Tessa stopped scrubbing. The teacher lowered her voice. 10 years ago, the Glass Sparrow closed after one performance. I was new then. I didn't know much. But I remember a girl named Mara Bell. Tessa's pulse quickened. "What happened to her?" "She left." "That's what they said?" "That's what everyone was told." Miss Halloway slid a folded sheet under a stack of paint rags. "I kept old blocking notes. Don't let anyone see that I gave you this." Then she left before Tessa could thank her. Tessa waited until the sink stopped running, then unfolded the sheet. It was a photocopy of a script page from The Glass Sparrow. Most of it was ordinary stage directions. A bird made of glass, a child locked in a tower, a puppet servant who could only speak when the lights were off. But in the margin, next to scene 3, Mara had written in small block letters, "West stair after curtain." Beside scene 2, another note. "He thinks his name is safe, if I make them laugh." Tessa read the sentence again. It was not a confession. It was not proof. It was a girl thinking ahead inside a play no one had taken seriously. At the bottom of the page, one character name had been changed. The printed name was Owned Boy. Someone had crossed out the D and squeezed in one letter by hand. Owen Boy. Tessa understood then that Mara had not hidden one clue. She had turned the whole puppet show into a map. A sound came from the doorway. Oliver stood there, breathless, one hand gripping the strap of his school bag. "They're sending me home," he said. "Who?" "Marlowe. She told my father I'm overwhelmed." Tessa folded the script page fast. Oliver opened his bag and pulled out a small envelope, cream-colored, old, and sealed with tape that had yellowed at the edges. "My mother had a box of Alderbrook things," he said. "My father never opened it after she died." On the front of the envelope, in handwriting that shook but did not break, were 4 words. For Owen, when found, Tessa did not touch it, neither did Oliver. For a moment, the envelope lay between them like a door neither one was ready to open. Then the hallway speaker crackled overhead. "Tessa Rivera, report to the headmistress's office immediately." Oliver looked up. Tessa folded Mara's script page into her pocket. Alderbrook had found its next move. Tessa had never been inside the headmistress's office before. She had walked past it many times with her eyes down, carrying boxes of programs or trays of donation envelopes. The door was always closed. The brass nameplate always shined. Behind it, students disappeared for scholarships, discipline hearings, parent meetings, and decisions that arrived in sealed envelopes. Now she sat in a leather chair that made her feel smaller than she was. Headmistress Marlowe stood behind her desk, reading from a file. "Tessa Rivera," she said. "Age 13, full scholarship, strong mathematics, strong mechanical aptitude, repeated notes about working after hours with her father on campus repair projects." Tessa kept her hands folded. "That is not a crime." "No," Marlowe said, "but pattern matters." Lyle Benton leaned against the bookshelf with a paper cup of gala coffee. He looked almost bored, which made Tessa trust him less. "Pattern?" Tessa asked. Marlowe closed the file. "Access to locked spaces, familiarity with props, a father who handles school property, an unusual interest in a donor's family." "You are making it sound like I planned this. I am asking whether someone helped you plan it." "My father didn't know anything." "I did not say your father." Benton finally spoke. "Adults can use children, Miss Rivera. Sometimes they use scholarship children because they know the child is desperate to keep what was given. My scholarship was earned." Marlowe's expression softened, almost sadly. "Then protect it." She opened a drawer and removed a printed form. Tessa could not read the whole page, but she saw the words "temporary suspension, pending review." "If you return any materials taken from the archive," the headmistress said, "and agree that last night was a misunderstanding caused by an old theatrical recording, this can remain informal." "What happens if I don't?" Benton smiled into his coffee. "Then people will ask why a student with financial pressure entered restricted storage, handled donor, sensitive material, and upset a minor child connected to the school's largest benefactor." There it was again, the version that reached people first. "If the recording is nothing," Tessa asked, "why are you scared of it?" Marlowe's eyes sharpened. "I am scared of children mistaking fragments for truth." Before Tessa could answer, the office phone lit up. Marlowe glanced at the screen. Benton straightened. "Excuse me," Marlowe said. She pressed a button and turned toward the window. Tessa heard only pieces. "Yes? Not here. No, Reed still has the device. Pause. The Bell file is not in student records anymore." Tessa kept her face still. Marlowe looked at Benton. He tapped one finger twice against the desk, warning her. "No," Marlowe said, lowering her voice. "Do not request it under that name." Another pause. "Because if the Reed adoption file is opened beside the West Stair report, someone will connect what should never have been filed together. Bell file, Reed adoption, West Stair report." The phone call ended. Marlowe turned back. "Your father is waiting outside." That was a lie. Tessa could tell because her father worked until 6. Benton opened the office door for her. As she stepped into the hall, he leaned close enough that no one else could hear. "Curiosity feels brave when you are 13, he said. "It feels different when the rent is due." Tessa did not answer. The admissions lobby was empty except for a receptionist arranging donor packets. Tessa sat beneath a framed photograph of Alderbrook's first graduating class and waited until Oliver appeared at the far end of the hall carrying a stack of library books. He did not look at her. He dropped one book. The receptionist sighed and went to help him. As Oliver bent down, a small object slid across the floor and stopped under Tessa's chair. A dull brass key with a paper tag. "West Stair Storage Holloway." Tessa closed her shoe over it. Oliver gathered his books and walked away without turning his head. Miss Halloway had chosen a side. That did not mean she was safe. The west stair was the oldest part of Alderbrook. Its door sat behind a row of framed sports trophies near the chapel corridor. Tessa reached it after final bell, when students were moving toward clubs, rides, and supervised study. Oliver waited behind the trophy case. "You heard something," he said. "Bell file. Read adoption file. West stair report." He gripped his bag strap. "That's 3 somethings. Not enough to prove anything, but enough to look." Tessa handed him back Amelia's envelope. "We should open this first." Oliver stared at the handwriting. For Owen, when found, he peeled the old tape carefully. Inside was no confession. Only 3 items. A chapel program from Oliver read the card aloud. "If he ever asks why I signed it, tell him I signed after they changed the first page." His voice thinned on the last words. "Signed what?" Tessa asked. Oliver shook his head. The photograph corner showed only part of an adult hand holding a child's shoulder. On the child's sweater was a stitched letter O. The chapel program had one line circled. "Winter Benefactors Reception, West Stair Gallery, closed for maintenance." "It wasn't maintenance," Tessa said. Oliver put the card back in the envelope. "My mother knew. Maybe she tried to fix it. Maybe she helped." The thought hurt him enough that Tessa looked away. They unlocked the west stair door. The air beyond it was colder. Narrow steps curved upward along a stone wall, ending at a landing where old frames leaned against each other under dust cloths. A sign read, "Storage access by permission only." The brass key opened a second door on the landing. Inside, boxes filled the shelves from floor to ceiling. Old banners, broken lamps, rolled backdrops, alumni plaques. The school's past, stored where visitors would not wander. Tessa found the theatre boxes first. Oliver searched the labels with a small flashlight from his bag. "Glass Sparrow," he whispered. The box was sealed with fresh tape. "That's new," Tessa said. She used a ruler from Oliver's bag to lift the tape without tearing it. Her father had taught her that too. Leave things looking untouched until you knew who was watching. Inside were costume scraps, cracked bird wings, and a bundle of puppet strings. No recorder. No full file, but at the bottom sat a stage manager's notebook. Tessa opened to scene 3. Most of the page had been ripped out. On the remaining strip, 3 words were written in pencil. Marat saw transfer. Oliver leaned over her shoulder. Transfer of what? A door closed somewhere below. Voices rose through the stairwell. Marlowe's voice came first. "I told you to move the remaining theatre materials." Benton answered, quieter. "We did. Halloway must have kept a duplicate. Then remove her from the spring production." "And Reed?" "Oppose. We keep him calm. The boy knows nothing useful." Oliver's breath caught beside Tessa. Benton said, "He has Amelia's envelope." Marlowe's reply came cold and low. Then the girl opened it for him. Tessa and Oliver crouched behind rolled backdrops. The voices moved closer, but did not enter. Benton spoke again. "If Nathaniel gets the adoption attorney involved, the 72 hours become a problem. Only if he learns Owen Bell was ever on campus. And Mara?" Marlowe's heels stopped on the landing outside. "Mara Bell was a disciplinary withdrawal," she said. "That is what the record says. That is not what happened at the West Stair." Tessa pressed her hand over her own mouth. Marlowe did not answer right away. Then she said, "Careful, Lyle." The warning carried more fear than anger. Benton lowered his voice until Tessa caught only fragments. Girl came back. Amelia refused. Not supposed to reach the Reeds. A phone buzzed. Marlowe said, "Destroy the duplicate before the review committee meets." Their footsteps retreated. Tessa waited until the stairwell held only the hum of old pipes. Oliver looked at the notebook in her hand. His face had changed. Not into understanding, into something harder. "They said I know nothing useful," he whispered. Tessa slid the ripped notebook page into her binder. "Then we should use that." Before they could leave, Oliver reached into the box and pulled out one of the puppet strings. A paper tag was tied to the end. On it, in the same small block letters as the script page, Mara had written, "If they say I left, ask who carried my trunk down the west stair." They left the west stair storage through the chapel corridor, not the service hall. Tessa chose that route because Marlowe would expect them to run toward the theatre. The chapel doors were propped open for gala flowers, and the air smelled of lilies, floor polish, and old hymnals. Oliver kept Amelia's envelope pressed flat beneath his blazer. Tessa held the stage manager's torn notebook page inside her binder. Tucked behind algebra homework, no one would search first. Nathaniel waited for them near the side entrance. One look at Oliver's face told him enough. "What did you find?" he asked. Oliver pulled out the tag from the puppet string. Nathaniel read Mara's words once. Then again, if they say I left, ask who carried my trunk down the west stair. His thumb moved over the pencil marks without touching them. This is not enough. Tessa expected the words to hurt. Instead, they sounded like a man forcing himself not to make the easy mistake. I know, she said. That's why they're not scared of one clue. They're scared of the clues being together. Nathaniel looked at her then with a new kind of attention. Oliver said, we heard them talking, Marlowe and Benton. They mentioned the adoption file, the 72 hours. Nathaniel's face tightened at that. What, 70? 2 hours? Oliver waited for him to explain, but Nathaniel did not. For the first time since Tessa had met him, the billionaire seemed to reach for certainty and find nothing in his hand. He took out his phone. We are leaving campus. Tessa shook her head. If I leave without checking out, they'll say I ran. They may say worse if you stay. They already started. Nathaniel studied her as if he was not used to someone refusing protection. Then he nodded once. Fine. We do this properly. Properly, at Alderbrook, meant slowly. Nathaniel requested a private conference room beside the administrative wing. Within 15 minutes, Marlowe arrived with Benton and the school's legal counsel, a woman named Claudia Voss, who carried one slim folder and spoke as if every word had passed through insurance first. Nathaniel placed the recorder, the old program, the tag, and Amelia's envelope on the table. I want these preserved, he said. No school employee handles them without my attorney present. Voss smiled faintly. Mr. Reed, the school appreciates your concern, but several of these items may be Alderbrook property. The envelope was my wife's. The recorder was found inside school property by a student currently under disciplinary review. Tessa sat straighter. Nathaniel's eyes cut toward Voss. Careful, the lawyer adjusted her folder. I am being careful. Chain of custody matters. Context matters. If this becomes a legal inquiry, contaminated evidence helps no one. It was the first official word that made Tessa understand how truth could lose before it ever reached a judge. Not because it was false, because it had been touched by the wrong hands. Nathaniel called his own attorney on speaker. A man named Mr. Said listened without interrupting, then asked 3 questions. Do you have the original adoption petition? Nathaniel looked at Oliver. At home. Do you have the court-certified copy? In storage with family documents. Do you have records from the first 3 days before placement? Nathaniel did not answer right away. Oliver watched his father's face. I don't know, Nathaniel said. Marlowe lowered her eyes in a way that looked respectful and felt rehearsed. Said said, then do not sign anything tonight. Do not surrender the recorder. Photograph every item. And Nathaniel, request the adoption file from your own side before the school requests anything from theirs. Benton gave a soft cough. That sounds unnecessarily adversarial. Nathaniel ended the call. So does hiding records behind concern. Marlowe's gaze did not move from him. You are emotional, Nathaniel. Anyone would be. My wife's voice is on a tape telling someone not to put my son's name on paper. Allegedly. Oliver flinched at the word. Tessa opened her binder and slid out the script page Miss Halloway had given her. Mara wrote West Stair after curtain in the blocking notes. Voss leaned forward. And how did you obtain that page? Tessa stopped. There were questions that wanted answers, and questions that wanted traps, Nathaniel noticed. Answer only if you choose. Voss's smile thinned. That may be the most interesting answer. Marlowe stood. This has gone far enough for one evening. Oliver needs rest. Miss Rivera needs her parent present. Alderbrook will conduct an internal review. Of itself? Tessa asked. Benton looked at her with mild disappointment. A clever line is not evidence. No, Tessa said, but evidence keeps disappearing around you. The conference room changed after that. Not loudly. No one shouted. But every adult looked at Tessa as if she had stepped out of her assigned place. Nathaniel gathered the items into a document bag from his briefcase. He wrote the time on a sticky note and signed across the seal. Tessa had never seen someone use power like that. Not to silence, to keep a thing from being quietly moved. Oliver, Nathaniel said, we're going home. I'm not leaving Tessa here. I'll take her to her father myself. Marlowe objected, but Nathaniel was already dialing. Mr. Rivera arrived 23 minutes later in his repair jacket, hair flattened from the rain, toolbox still in his hand. He listened while Tessa told the shortest safe version. His face did not show fear until Marlowe mentioned scholarship conduct. Then Tessa saw it. Not fear of guilt, fear of rent, fear of work disappearing, Fear of his daughter losing the one door they had both pushed open for years. Nathaniel saw it too. "Mr. Rivera," he said, "your daughter found something adults missed." Marlowe answered before Tessa's father could. "Your daughter handled restricted archival material and entered storage without authorization." Mr. Rivera looked at Tessa. "Did you break anything?" "No." "Did you steal anything?" "No." "Did you lie to me?" "No." He nodded. "Then stand straight. Tessa did." It helped more than Nathaniel's lawyers. By morning, the first barrier had gone up. Tessa's student account was restricted. Her locker had been inspected for archive safety. Miss Halloway was absent from drama class, replaced by a substitute who knew nothing about theatre. Oliver did not come to first period. At lunch, a rumor spread that Tessa had tried to sell a secret recording to the Reeds. By final bell, the rumor had improved itself. Now she had blackmailed Oliver. People believe the version that reaches them first. Tessa wrote that sentence on the back of the puppet girl's sticky note and folded it beside Mara's copied script page. After school, Nathaniel's driver brought her and her father to the Reed townhouse. Tessa had never seen a home that looked quiet on purpose. There were no piles of repair parts, no laundry machines rumbling below, no neighbors arguing through thin walls. Even the clock seemed expensive enough not to tick. Oliver met them in the library. On the table lay 3 boxes labeled Amelia Personal, Amelia Alderbrook, and Oliver Early Records. Nathaniel stood beside them, sleeves rolled up. "I found the court-certified adoption packet," he said. "It says Oliver Reed from the first page." Tessa's stomach sank. Oliver looked smaller. "But," Nathaniel continued, "Saeed found a transfer receipt in my archived email. It references an intake packet with initials OB, attached for 72-hour emergency review." He placed a printed email on the table. The attachment name had been partially corrupted, but enough remained. Obel, Templacement, Draft. Oliver read it without moving. Mr. Rivera leaned over the paper. "Drafts can be changed." "Yes," Nathaniel said, "and someone changed this one before I ever saw the final." For the first time, the evidence did not feel like a ghost story. It felt like a paper trail. Then Nathaniel's phone rang. He listened for less than 10 seconds. His eyes moved to Tessa. "What?" she asked. Nathaniel put the call on speaker. Mr. Saeed's voice came through, controlled but urgent. "Alderbrook just sent a preliminary incident report. They claim Tessa Rivera's student ID accessed archived digital records at 2:13 this morning." Tessa stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "I was home." Her father said. "She was asleep." Saeed continued. "The file accessed was labeled Bell, Mara disciplinary withdrawal." Oliver looked from Tessa to his father. Nathaniel's hand closed around the printed email, and Tessa understood the next move before anyone said it. They were going to make her look like the person who had planted the truth. The first good news came from a man who refused to call it good news. Dr. Simon Vale worked out of a sound laboratory above a piano repair shop in Queens. He had grey hair, headphones around his neck, and shelves full of old tape machines that looked more alive than some people. Nathaniel had found him through Mr. Saeed, who said Vale had testified in enough courtrooms to know the difference between proof and hope. He played the recorder through 3 different machines. No one spoke while the tape ran. Tessa sat beside her father at the edge of the work table. Oliver stood near the window, arms folded tight against his chest. Nathaniel paced until Dr. Vale asked him to stop because the floorboards were making noise. At last, Vale removed his headphones. "The device is old. The tape is degraded. There are dropouts." "But," Oliver asked. Vale looked at him kindly, which somehow made the answer harder. "But I do not hear evidence of modern digital editing. The voices were recorded onto this tape years ago." Oliver let out a breath. Tessa felt her father's hand cover hers under the table. Nathaniel leaned forward. "So it's real." "It is an authentic recording," Vale said. "That does not mean every sentence is complete. It does not identify every speaker. It does not prove what happened around the recording." The hope in the room thinned, but it did not disappear. Vale tapped a waveform printed on a sheet of paper. "There is a damaged section after the phrase about Oliver. Something was either recorded over, or the tape was interrupted. I can recover part of it, maybe." He adjusted a dial and played the broken section again. Static scraped the speaker. Then Amelia Reed's voice came through, lower than before. "Vivian, you promised they would not separate them." Oliver turned toward his father. Nathaniel's face changed in a way Tessa could not read. Anger, guilt, and fear all seemed to reach him at once. Vale stopped the tape. "That is all I can recover cleanly today." "Vivian," Nathaniel said. No one needed to ask which Vivian. For 1 hour, it felt as if the wall had cracked wide enough for daylight. Mr. Saeed drafted a formal preservation notice. Nathaniel ordered his office to locate every payment Alderbrook had received from Reed family accounts during the year of Oliver's adoption. Tessa's father took the puppet cord from her binder and showed Vale the knots, explaining how stage crews marked sequence and weight. Even Oliver helped, spreading programs across the work table and circling every mention of the glass sparrow. Then Nathaniel's phone began to vibrate. First once, then again, then again. He read the screen and did not answer. Mr. Saeed called next. Nathaniel put him on speaker. "Nathaniel," the lawyer said, "do not respond to any school communication in writing yet." "What happened?" "Alderbrook has opened a disciplinary review into Tessa Rivera. They are alleging unauthorized access, removal of archival materials, and emotional manipulation of a minor student." Oliver stepped forward. "That's a lie. They are also claiming the recording was circulated outside school custody by Miss Rivera before authentication." Tessa stared at the recorder on the table. "I didn't circulate anything." Saeed's voice stayed even. "A short audio clip was sent anonymously to 3 parent committee members this morning. It contains Amelia's sentence about Oliver, but not the part naming Vivian." Nathaniel shut his eyes for 1 second. Benton's lesson had arrived right on schedule. People believe the version that reaches them first. This version made Tessa look like a scholarship student with a secret tape and a rich boy to exploit. By noon, Alderbrook sent an official message to families. It did not name Tessa, but it did not need to. It said the school was investigating a serious breach involving archived student materials and the unauthorized handling of sensitive content connected to a current family. It promised compassion, privacy, and discipline. Compassion for whom? Tessa wondered. Privacy for what? Discipline for the person easiest to punish. At 2 o'clock, Marlowe held the review in a glass-walled conference room at Alderbrook. Tessa sat between her father and Mr. Saeed. Nathaniel sat across from Marlowe, not beside her. Oliver had been told to wait outside, but he refused until Nathaniel told him, quietly, that hearing every accusation would not make him stronger. So Oliver waited in the hall. Tessa hated that more than she expected. Claudia Voss opened the school's folder. Miss Rivera's student ID was used at 2:13 a.m. to access archived digital material related to Mara Bell. "I was asleep," Tessa said. Voss nodded, as if she had expected that. "The system logs will be reviewed. For now, the access event is documented. My daughter doesn't even have remote archive permission," Mr. Rivera said. "That is part of the concern." Marlowe folded her hands. "Someone may have shared credentials. Someone may have used a device left open. We are not assigning final blame today." Benton sat near the end of the table, taking notes by hand. "We are determining risk." Tessa looked at him. "Risk to who?" "To students," Benton said. "To families. To the integrity of records that protect children." The words sounded noble enough to be dangerous. Saeed placed Dr. Vale's preliminary letter on the table. "The recording is not a modern fabrication." Voss read only the first page. "Preliminary. Limited. Not a statement of context. It confirms Tessa did not invent it. It confirms an old tape contains old voices," Voss replied. "That is different." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "You are slicing language very thin. That is what legal review requires." Marlowe turned to Nathaniel with a controlled sadness that made Tessa want to stand up. "No one here wants to hurt Oliver. But you must understand how this looks. A vulnerable boy, a deceased mother's voice, a scholarship student with access to backstage areas, and a story that grows more dramatic every hour." "My son is not vulnerable because he heard the truth," Nathaniel said. "He is vulnerable because adults keep managing it for him." For once, Marlowe did not answer immediately. Then Benton slid a printed page toward the center of the table. It was a screenshot from a parent group chat. Someone had written, "Is this the girl who works with her father on campus? I heard she knew exactly where to find the old tape. Seems planned." Tessa's father read it, and something in his face folded inward. Marlowe spoke gently. "Mr. Rivera, your campus repair contract will be paused until the review concludes. Not terminated. Paused. There were many ways to take food from a table without touching the plate." Tessa's father put the paper down. "My work has nothing to do with this." "Access has everything to do with this," Voss said. Tessa felt the trap tighten. If her father worked on campus, he was suspicious. If he did not, they lost income. If she defended him, she looked emotional. If she stayed calm, they would call her rehearsed. Nathaniel stood. "This meeting is over." Marlowe looked up. "Nathaniel, walking out will not make the review disappear." "No," he said, "but staying will not make it fair." Outside the conference room, Oliver rose from the bench. Before anyone could stop him, he walked to Tessa and held out his phone. On the screen was a message from an unknown number. "Tell Puppet Girl to stop before Owen loses both families." Tessa read it twice. Oliver's face was tight with shame, as if the threat had arrived through him. "I didn't know who else to show," he said. Nathaniel took the phone. Saeed photographed the message. Marlowe stepped from the conference room and saw all of them looking at it. For the first time that day, her careful expression almost failed. Almost. Then she said, "That is exactly why Oliver needs distance from this situation." 2 hours later, Nathaniel received a formal recommendation from Alderbrook's counseling office. Oliver Reed was to remain off campus for emotional stabilization. Tessa Rivera was suspended from all extracurricular activities, barred from theater spaces, and placed under academic conduct review. Mr. Rivera's repair contract was frozen. Miss Halloway was put on leave. The tape was real. The clues were multiplying, and somehow by sunset, Tessa was the one Alderbrook had turned into the danger. The worst part was not being suspended from theater. It was walking past the theater doors and hearing other students rehearse inside. Tessa stood in the hallway with her backpack against one shoulder. While voices rose from the stage, he was no longer allowed to enter. The glass sparrow materials were locked away. Miss Halloway's classroom was dark. A notice on the drama board said spring casting would be postponed for staffing reasons. No one had written Tessa's name. They did not need to. By third period, 2 girls moved their books when she sat near them. In math, a boy asked if she could get into his grades too. At lunch, a teacher told her it might be healthier to eat in the scholarship office until the review was complete. Healthier meant invisible. Tessa almost agreed. Then she remembered her father in the conference room, asking only 3 questions. "Did you break anything? Did you steal anything? Did you lie to me?" She took her tray to the same cafeteria table she always used and sat down. Across town, Oliver was not allowed to sit anywhere. Nathaniel had kept him home after Alderbrook's counseling recommendation, but home had become another kind of locked room. Tutors came and went. Lawyers called. His father spoke in careful tones behind library doors. Every adult said the same thing in different clothes. "Wait, rest, let us handle it." Oliver lasted until noon. He borrowed his driver's tablet under the excuse of checking assignments, logged into his school account, and found half his messages gone. The unknown threat had disappeared too, removed through a security sink installed years ago to protect him. Protection, Oliver was learning, could look a lot like control. He wrote Tessa one message through the homework portal. If they used your ID, they needed a terminal. "Ask where your account logged in." The message vanished after 10 seconds. But Tessa saw it first. After school, she went to the library help desk, where Mrs. Iqbal still used paper slips for printer jams and password resets. Tessa asked for her login history. Mrs. Iqbal's eyebrows rose. "I'm not supposed to release system logs to students." "I know. Then why ask me?" "Because someone is using my name." The librarian looked toward the security camera, then took a blue request form from a drawer. "Fill this out for an account security complaint," she said. "Officially, it goes to IT. And unofficially?" Mrs. Iqbal slid a second sheet beneath it. "Printers remember rooms even when people forget them." The sheet was a maintenance log. At 2:14 a.m., 1 minute after Tessa's ID allegedly accessed the Mara Bell file, a printer in the administrative wing had jammed on a job labeled Bell, M, Discipline, Scan. Admin, 2F, Copy. Tessa had never been on the second floor of administration. Mrs. Iqbal did not look at the page. "If you show that to anyone, say you found it on the copier tray." "Why help me?" The librarian's mouth tightened. "Because 10 years ago a girl asked me for an envelope, and I told her to come back after lunch. I never saw her again." That evening, Nathaniel Reed did something he had spent years paying other people to do. He opened the boxes himself. He sat on the library floor in shirt sleeves, surrounded by adoption papers, donor receipts, old email printouts, and legal invoices from a decade earlier. Mr. Saeed was on video call. Oliver sat at the table, watching his father move through documents with growing anger at his own ignorance. "I signed what they put in front of me," Nathaniel said. Saeed answered, "Most adoptive parents do. I had lawyers. You had lawyers who trusted the placement packet. I paid people to be careful." Oliver spoke quietly. "Maybe they were careful about the wrong thing. Nathaniel looked at his son. The sentence landed harder because it was true. For years, Nathaniel had believed good intentions plus expensive professionals made a clean life. He had let polished adults tell him which forms mattered, which questions were unnecessary, which grief could be made easier with privacy. Now every smooth page looked like a door painted shut. At 8:40 p.m., Mr. Saeed found the first break, a Reed Foundation payment, coded as Emergency Youth Placement Support, had been made to a private guardianship agency 3 days before Oliver's adoption petition was finalized. The agency no longer existed. At 9:12, Nathaniel found a courier receipt with Amelia's initials beside a delivery to Alderbrook. At 9:37, Oliver opened a thin folder labeled Temporary Medical Intake and found a photocopy so faint it looked almost blank. He adjusted the lamp. A child's name appeared beneath the washed-out ink. Owen Bell. Date of birth matched Oliver's. Emergency contact. Mara Bell. Sibling. Next line. Contact restricted pending disciplinary review. Oliver pressed the page flat with both hands, as if it might try to disappear again. Nathaniel moved beside him. His eyes went to the name, then to the date, then to his son's face. Owen, he said, and the word came out like an apology he had no right to make yet. Oliver pulled the page closer. Don't say it like you're taking Oliver away. Nathaniel's hand stopped in the air. I'm not. Everyone keeps acting like one name has to kill the other. No, Nathaniel said carefully. No one gets to do that to you again. The word again stayed between them. Tessa arrived with her father at 10, carrying the printer log in a folded notebook. Mr. Rivera had lost 2 more repair jobs that afternoon after an Alderbrook administrator mentioned an active trust issue. He did not mention it until Tessa noticed the empty spaces in his calendar. Nathaniel read the printer log and stood. This places the scan inside administration. It places a print job there, Saeed corrected from the laptop. We still need the terminal record, camera footage, or a witness. Tessa thought of Mrs. Iqbal. There may be a witness. To the login. No. To Mara trying to send something before she disappeared. Oliver slid the faint photocopy toward her. Tessa read Owen Bell. Her throat tightened, but she remembered Oliver's warning. One name should not erase the other. She looked at him. What do you want me to call you? Oliver looked down at the paper. I don't know yet. Then I'll wait. It was the smallest promise anyone made that night, and maybe the only one no lawyer could ruin. At 10:26, Mr. Saeed's email chimed. The subject line read, Urgent Alderbrook Review Packet. Attached was the school's evidence summary for the next morning's emergency board meeting. Tessa saw her own name on the first page. Unauthorized archive access. Possible manipulation of student witness. Potential fabrication of historical materials. Then Nathaniel turned to the last page. Alderbrook recommended permanent revocation of Tessa Rivera's scholarship and a no-contact order between Tessa Rivera and Oliver Reed. Oliver stood so abruptly his chair struck the rug. Nathaniel did not tell him to calm down. He looked at Saeed on the screen. Get me on that board meeting. Saeed shook his head. It is internal. I am their largest donor. That gives you influence, not procedure. Nathaniel looked at the old intake page with Owen's name, then at Tessa's printer log, then at his son. Then, tomorrow, he said, we stop using influence and start using evidence. At that moment, Tessa's phone buzzed. An email from an unknown address. No message. Only one attachment. A scanned photograph showed a teenage girl outside Alderbrook's west stair, one hand gripping the handle of a battered trunk. Behind her, half hidden by the stairwell shadow, stood Lyle Benton. The file name was only 2 words. Mara left. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. By 7:45, Alderbrook had already arranged the room to decide the ending. Tessa sat at the end of the long table with her father on one side and Mr. Saeed on the other. Across the room, Headmistress Marlowe sat beneath portraits of former founders, her folder closed, as if the facts inside it had already behaved. Lyle Benton stood near the screen with a remote in his hand. Oliver was not supposed to be there. He came anyway. Nathaniel entered with him, carrying only a thin stack of papers and Amelia's envelope. The board members shifted when they saw him. Influence entered rooms before Nathaniel did, but that morning he looked less like a donor and more like a father who had finally stopped outsourcing courage. Marlowe began before anyone could settle. This review concerns Miss Rivera's conduct, not Mr. Reed's family history. Nathaniel sat beside Oliver. That is convenient. Voss opened her folder. Miss Rivera accessed restricted material, removed archival objects, and encouraged a vulnerable student to interpret incomplete content as personal history. Tessa held her breath through the word vulnerable. Oliver did not. "Stop calling me that when you mean controllable," he said. The board chair, Dr. Albright, cleared his throat. "Oliver, this is a formal review." "Then formally," Oliver said, "I want both my names in the minutes." Nathaniel placed the faded intake photocopy on the table. "This lists Owen Bell, same date of birth as Oliver. Emergency contact, Mara Bell, sibling." Benton stepped forward. "A photocopy of uncertain origin cannot override a court-certified adoption." "No," Saeed said, "but it can justify asking why the certified file begins after a 72-hour gap." He connected his laptop to the screen. First came the corrupted email attachment, Obel, d'emplacement, draft. Then the Reed Foundation payment to the private guardianship agency. Then Amelia's index card. "If he ever asks why I signed it, tell him I signed after they changed the first page." Marlowe spoke smoothly. "We cannot build accusations on grief notes and file fragments." "Agreed," Nathaniel said. Saeed clicked again. The screen showed the printer maintenance log from Alderbrook's administrative wing. ADMIN 2. F. Copy. Bell. M. Discipline. Scan. 2:14 a.m. Voss leaned forward. "Where was this obtained?" "From your own maintenance system," Saeed said. "Submitted through an account security complaint." Marlowe turned toward Tessa. "Which proves only that Miss Rivera knew where to look." "I didn't know that copier existed," Tessa said. Benton gave a small, patient sigh. "Children can be coached. Adults can frame them," Tessa said. Saeed clicked again. A security still appeared on the screen. The second-floor administrative hall at 2:11 a.m. A man in a dark coat stood at the copier. Benton's smile left first. The rest of his face tried to keep it. Dr. Albright looked from the screen to Benton. "Lyle, that could be anyone," Benton said. Saeed clicked to the next image. The same man turned slightly, showing the edge of a crooked bow tie. Nathaniel said, "Alderbrook accused a 13-year-old girl while its head of development was printing the file in the administrative wing." Marlowe said, "Lyle may have been responding to a records concern." "At 2:11 inches the morning?" Tessa asked. Benton's voice sharpened. "You have no idea what institutions do to protect children." "Which children?" Oliver asked. That question reached the board in a way Tessa's anger never could. Saeed brought up the scanned photograph sent to Tessa's phone. Mara at the west stair, hand on the battered trunk. Benton half hidden behind her. Benton looked at it for less than a second. "That photo has no context." Tessa opened her binder and laid out Mara's tag, the stage manager's torn note, and the script page. "If they say I left, ask who carried my trunk down the west stair." Mara saw transfer, west stair after curtain. "They all point to the same place," Tessa said. "The tape, the puppet strings, the script notes, the trunk photo, the intake page. None solves the whole thing alone. But together they say Mara Bell did not simply leave." Marlowe's voice cooled. "Miss Rivera, you are a child interpreting artifacts you do not understand." "I understand repair," Tessa said. "When one piece breaks, maybe it's an accident. When every broken piece hides the same shape, someone built it that way." Oliver removed the chapel program from Amelia's envelope. "West Stair Gallery closed for maintenance," he read. "The same night Mara disappeared." Marlowe's face stayed composed, but her eyes moved to Benton. Benton saw it too. He put both palms on the table. "Vivian, do not make me the shape of this." Marlowe said quietly, "Lyle." "No," Benton said. "You said it would be a private placement issue. You said the girl would calm down. You said Amelia Reed had agreed." Nathaniel stood. "My wife did not agree." Benton looked at the tape recorder sealed in its evidence bag. "She signed." "She signed after you changed the first page," Oliver said. The words came from Amelia's card, but Oliver made them his own. Marlowe turned to the board chair. "This is precisely why emotionally charged material should not be aired in a school proceeding." Saeed held up one hand. "Then you will appreciate the last item." On the screen appeared a live video call. An older woman sat in a small office. Her face was thinner than in the old photograph. Her hair cut short, her eyes fixed not on the board, but on Oliver. Saeed said, "For the record, please state your name." The woman swallowed. "Mara Bell." Oliver gripped the edge of the table. Mara's voice shook, but she did not stop. "I did not withdraw from Alderbrook. I was removed after I tried to stop my brother from being transferred under another name. I hid what I could, because no one believed scholarship girls when donor families were involved. Marlowe stood. This witness has not been vetted. Mara looked at her then. You had 10 years to vet me, headmistress. Mara held up an old key attached to a strip of blue stage tape. I still have the trunk key, she said. And I still have the letter Amelia Reed wrote me 2 weeks before she died. Oliver whispered. She wrote to you? She tried to find us, Mara said. Both of us. Nathaniel looked at the board members, then at Tessa, then at his son. I funded this school for years, he said. I praised its discipline, its privacy, its ability to make problems quiet. I thought that meant children were being protected. He turned to Marlowe. I was wrong, and I helped pay for the silence that hurt my son, Mara Bell, and the girl you tried to blame this morning. Tessa felt her father's hand touch her shoulder. Dr. Albright closed the folder in front of him. This review is suspended, he said, effective immediately, and this matter is being referred outside the school. Marlowe looked at him. Robert, no, he said, not inside, not this time. Mara Bell was still watching Oliver. Oliver did not say Owen. He did not say sister. He did not say anything that would turn one wound into a clean reunion. He only lifted his hand, uncertainly, so she could see him. Mara lifted hers back, and on the table between them, the broken puppet's evidence had finally become a voice no one in Alderbrook could put back inside the wood. The first official consequence was not an apology. It was a sentence read into the record. Pending external review. Dr. Albright said, all disciplinary action against Tessa Rivera is suspended. Her scholarship remains active. Her access restrictions are lifted, except where required by normal student policy. Tessa did not move. Her father's hand tightened once on her shoulder, then released. He knew better than to celebrate before a powerful room finished deciding what kind of truth it could afford. Dr. Albright continued. The board further acknowledges that Miss Rivera provided material evidence relevant to a historical child placement matter and was incorrectly named as the primary security risk before adequate review. Incorrectly named. It was a small phrase. It was also the first time Alderbrook had put protection around her name instead of suspicion. Marlowe sat very straight as the board chair turned to her. Headmistress Marlowe, effective immediately, you are placed on administrative leave. You will surrender access to student records, donor communications, archival storage, and disciplinary systems. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. No graceful sentence came to rescue her. Benton tried one. I acted to preserve institutional continuity. Saeed placed the 2:11 a.m. security still beside the trunk photograph. You acted after hours to create a record that pointed at a child. Dr. Albright looked at him. Mr. Benton, you are suspended pending referral to outside counsel and child protective review. For the first time, Benton looked at Tessa without a prepared expression. Nathaniel stood before the board could adjourn. I need this added to the record, he said. My family money helped Alderbrook avoid questions it should have answered. I funded privacy when I should have demanded accountability. I cannot undo what silence cost Mara Bell, or what it took from my son. But I will cooperate with every outside review, even if that review exposes my own failure. Oliver stared down at his hands. Mara remained on the video screen, older than the girl in the photograph, still holding the trunk key. Tessa looked at the broken puppet, sealed in its evidence bag. For years, Alderbrook had taught children when to speak, where to stand, and whose version mattered. That morning, the record finally learned a poorer girl's name. 3 months later, the old theatre at Alderbrook opened on a rainy afternoon with no donors, no photographers, and no gala speeches. Only a few people came. Tessa sat in the second row with her father. His campus repair contract had not returned, not officially, but he had more work now than before, from parents who had quietly learned what kind of man fixed things without asking how much embarrassment was attached to them. He still drove the same old pickup. Nothing about their life had become easy, but Tessa's scholarship letter had been rewritten, not reinstated, confirmed. Mr. Saeed had insisted on that word. Reinstated made it sound like Alderbrook had given something back out of kindness. Confirmed meant it had always been hers. Oliver entered through the side door with Nathaniel and Mara Bell. He did not run to Mara. She did not reach for him, as if 10 years could be repaired by one embrace. They had tried lunch twice. Both times were awkward. Oliver had asked questions he was afraid to hear answered. Mara had answered some and left others for later. Sometimes she called him Oliver. Once, by accident, she called him Owen, and apologized before he could decide how it felt. That afternoon, he He sat beside her anyway. It was not a perfect reunion. It was a beginning with sharp edges. Nathaniel stood near the stage where the blue puppet rested on a small wooden stand. The puppet had been repaired by Tessa and her father after the outside review released it for display. Its arm moved again. Its painted face had been cleaned, but the split in its chest remained, sealed with a thin line of clear resin. "You could hide it better," Oliver had said when he first saw the repair. Tessa had shaken her head. Then it would look like nothing happened. Now the puppet looked exactly like something had happened, and survived. Alderbrook was different, but not healed. Headmistress Marlowe was still under investigation. Benton's lawyers had stopped using the phrase institutional continuity after the Child Protective Review found 2 more scholarship students whose records had been altered years earlier. The board had hired an interim head. Posters about student safety appeared in halls where students still whispered when adults passed. Truth had entered the building. Trust would take longer. Nathaniel walked to the first row and faced Tessa. "I owe you more than an apology," he said. Tessa glanced at her father. He gave the smallest nod, the kind that meant listen, but do not shrink. Nathaniel continued, "I spent years believing I could protect my son by paying careful people to keep life clean around him. You showed me that clean is not the same as honest." Tessa did not know what to do with praise in public. It made her want to look at the floor, so she looked at the puppet instead. Mara stepped onto the stage. In her hand was the trunk key, now tied to a new strip of blue tape. She placed it beside the puppet. "I used to think no one heard me," she said. "But Tessa did. Years late, maybe. But she heard." Oliver rose slowly and joined her. For a moment, the theatre seemed to wait for him to choose a name. He did not. He touched the puppet's wooden hand. "My name is Oliver Reed," he said. Then he looked at Mara. "And I want to learn who Owen Bell was." Mara's face changed, not into happiness exactly, but into relief that did not know where to rest. Tessa watched them from the second row and felt something inside her loosen, not because everything had been fixed. Marlowe was not in prison. Benton had not confessed to everything. The outside review was still gathering records, and Mara still had days when she did not answer Oliver's messages. Tessa still heard whispers at school. Some students apologized, some only became polite, but the story had changed hands. It no longer belonged to the people who had buried it. After the gathering ended, Tessa climbed onto the stage to adjust the puppet's repaired arm. Oliver stood beside her. "Do you think it remembers?" he asked. Tessa tightened one small screw and smiled without looking up. "No," she said. "I think we do." Outside, rain tapped softly against the old theatre windows. This time, no one mistook the sound for silence.